As retired General Stanley McChrystal said, our military is only as strong as the individual soldier. Our military is already being undermined by poor physical fitness in many parts of the country. Obesity is one of the greatest threats to national security because we need people who are physically capable and healthy to ensure our military's strength. Amen. Welcome to First Responder Fitness with Carl Wimmer, where armor is forged through mental, spiritual, and physical preparation. Welcome to First Responder Fitness with Carl Wimmer. It is a pleasure to be joining you again on another Monday morning. If you are joining us and have not yet subscribed to our channel, I would just encourage you to do so. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, hit subscribe, and share. It goes a long ways in helping our channel, helping to, with the algorithm and making sure that first responders, loved ones, their families see these videos. They are so important, and we really appreciate it. We're grateful for you as this is the season of Thanksgiving. I just want to pause for just a minute and give you thanks for watching. Thank you for being a part of the First Responder Fitness family. Thank you for sharing your feedback with us. And it is part of that feedback that has led to this specific episode. And it's something I'm passionate about, but it's obviously something that our listeners are passionate about. And it's one of those episodes that I got to warn you, in today's day and age where we are soft, we are cushy, where we don't like to offend, and where political correctness seems to rule everything, this episode just might be triggering. It needs to come with a trigger warning, I guess, for certain people, but it's something that has to be said. It is something that needs to be addressed. This idea came from one of our listeners, Mark, who is a retired military veteran. He served in Iraq for a tour of duty and is retired now. He reached out and said that one of his greatest fears, and this was after our episode talking about Robert Kennedy Jr. and some of the changes that he might make to the health industry here in the United States with his appointment. And at the time that we made that episode, we weren't sure what he would be appointed to, but now it does appear that he is going to be the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, which I think is super exciting. And apropos to the video I made comparing him to the current Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, who is an obese person and does not appear, by observation only, I'm not judging based on actual knowledge, but does not appear to be someone who takes their health seriously, whereas RFK Jr. absolutely does. But after that episode, Mark reached out and said one of his biggest fears for our national security as a veteran, as a military person, is the weakening of our military and our law enforcement. What appears to be a decline in the physical fitness of our military. But more than that, an absolute decline in the physical fitness of youth, of young men and young women in America who are ready, who are recruit ready for the military. There are less and less people who are of military age coming out of high school who are physically fit and ready for the military. And that puts us all at risk. The same can be said for those who are entering the fire service and those who are entering law enforcement. If you've been following us for a while, you're aware that I have two sons, both of which appear to be going down the road to becoming firefighters. In fact, just yesterday, my eldest son, he had his final background interview with the background investigator during the hiring process of a large fire department locally here in our state. And it's going well. And one of the questions that he was asked was how his physical fitness was. Well, my son has really way better genetics than I do physically. Even though I was physically strong, I have a propensity for strength. And as I mentioned before, I could literally barbell bench press 100 pounds in 4th grade. So I had a propensity for strength. My son has far better genetics than I do for fitness, strength, and conditioning. But even he has gotten a little bit out of condition since the fire academy. He told the recruiter that he told the background investigator, he said, I'm in better shape than most people, period. But I am a little bit out of shape in comparison to what I normally am. And it wasn't a big deal because the guy said, well, you'll have plenty of time to get into shape before you enter our in-house academy. So things are looking good. And it looks like we're going to have some fire heroes in our family. And that just makes me so proud. Really does. But this idea, this truth of the lack of health in our youth and in our community, in our country, puts us all at risk. Understand this. We can be as body positive as we want to be. That's fine. I'm all about body positivity. I, in no way, shape, or form do I support or does first responder fitness support shaming someone because of the size of their gut, their butt, their legs, or what they eat, or how obese they are. I do not believe in making fun of people at all. I was obese. I struggled with being a chubby. My mom always called me husky. Thanks, Mom. I struggled with being chubby most of my life. The thing that turned it around for me was when I started competitive fighting and boxing competitively. I could not be chubby anymore, and I worked very hard and got down to the weight, my fighting weight, and I was in excellent condition. But most of my life growing up, I struggled with being chubby. And so it's sensitive to me. I hated being called fat. I hated being made fun of. But there's a time and a place where we need to put our feelings away, where we need to pull up our big boy pants and big girl pants and come to the realization that our health and the health of our nation is putting us at risk. Period. The fact that we cannot recruit fit young men and women into our military, and the fact that we cannot recruit fit young men and women into the law enforcement and firefighting academy puts society and our nation at risk. And before I started to record this, I sat down and I watched a couple of videos. And you may be familiar with these videos, but in particular, the military videos, the military recruiting videos. And if you do back to back to back, look at the military recruiting videos from China, from Russia, and from the United States, it's pathetically embarrassing. Now, there is nothing like those old, the few, the proud, the Marines military videos. Those things are awesome. I mean, the freaking Marine rising up from the water with the painted face, just looking menacing and like a man and ready to defend and kill and fight to the death for his country. But those days, those videos, I haven't seen one of those in decades, since I was in elementary school. Nowadays, you look at the the Chinese recruitment video, and it's patriotic, and it shows these Chinese men marching and in order and battling, and it shows one of them rising from the water. It just had images of the old Marine videos. The Russian video is absolute, complete testosterone alpha male from beginning to end. It shows fit men and women doing pull-ups and sit-ups and doing the obstacle course and preparing for combat. That's what we're preparing for. We are not preparing to slap them with our purse. We are preparing for combat. And then you go to the U.S. military one. And it's literally a cartoon about a young woman who was raised by two mothers and their inclusivity. And I'm all fine, be inclusive. Great. I'm not here to bash on that. I'm not here to even politically comment on that. What I am here to comment on is the weak soy milk trash advertising that the U.S. military put out in comparison to what Russia was putting out. It's embarrassing. If you were a space alien and you came to Earth and you watched those two commercials, you would walk away immediately thinking that Russia rules the world and that the United States is a country that is weak. We have declined in this nation when it comes to health, fitness, and what it means to be prepared to defend and fight to the death for what we believe in. It's a tragic, tragic commentary on what has happened to our country. And it is my hope that with the help of RFK Jr. at the helm of the Health and Human Services Department, and with some of the changes that are coming to the military, that changes. But that's not going to be nearly enough. We need a systematic change from the time that we are children until we are adults that prioritizes and stresses the importance of physical and mental fitness. Period. You know, and I've seen it in my career as a law enforcement officer. I'm now retired in 2020, but I've seen it in the 23, 25 years that I've been involved in law enforcement. I've seen the fitness standard change. And frankly, I was quite happy with it, to be honest with you. But the Law Enforcement Academy almost killed me. And that's not hyperbole. I literally almost died. And this is not one of those walking to school in snow uphill both ways stories, but it's just the truth. I entered the Law Enforcement Academy, I believe it was 1996. 1996. And I had just started 97, and I had just gotten interested in powerlifting, starting my powerlifting career. It was actually towards the end of 96, 97. It's irrelevant, but either way, I had just started getting really bulky, both powerful and strong. And I did not hit my peak weight. When I was in the Law Enforcement Academy, I weighed about 240 pounds. And as you know, I would eventually reach a maximum weight of right around 305 pounds as a competitive powerlifter, usually competing in the 275-pound weight division. But in the Law Enforcement Academy, I weighed about 240. The physical fitness standard was not excruciating by any means, but it was very hard for me. And it was very hard for a lot of us. Back then, you had to be able to do 40 sit-ups in a minute. That's moving out. You had to be able to do 32 push-ups in a minute, which means that typically, if you were going to fail one of those, you would run out of time on the sit-ups because you had to really move, and you had to do sit-ups nonstop for a minute almost in order to get 40 in a minute. The push-ups, you would not run out of time, but you'd run out of push-up ability if you failed either of those. I didn't have a lot of trouble with either of those two. There was also a sit and reach. You had to sit and reach, show your flexibility of your posterior chain. And then there was the 1.5 mile run. In my day, you had to run the 1.5 miles in 12 minutes and 12 seconds. And so that's roughly an 8-minute mile. That is not record breaking by any means, but it is moving out. It is running at a good pace consistently. And to make a very long, boring story a little shorter and a little less boring, a couple weeks into the police academy, I stepped off a sidewalk and broke my ankle. And so I was down from running for a couple weeks. They let me stay in the academy. They warned me, though, that if I didn't pass the physical fitness test, I would not be able to go on. We were split up into two modules. The first half was for officers who, special function officers, your bailiffs, your correctional officers. And the second half was full on category 1 law enforcement, your street cops. And if you wanted to go on to the second half, you had to pass the physical fitness standard in between. So I made sure that I did everything I possibly could to stay in shape. And as soon as I could get running again on that foot, I did. And the day came for the physical fitness standard. And I failed the run. I ran it, I don't know, maybe 12 minutes and 45 seconds. Too long. For about 35 seconds too slow. They had a makeup test 2 weeks later. So I ran every single day, sometimes twice a day, getting in shape, getting ready. On the day of the makeup exam, I took off and I had a pacer. I had somebody pace me, someone who was in very good shape, very good runner. And he set the pace and he's like, if you just keep up with me, you will pass. So I kept up with him for the first mile. Then my legs started getting very, very heavy, but I kept up with him. For the next quarter mile, kept up with him, but I started getting real tired, but I kept pushing. I was literally, and those in the academy that were in my academy class will remember this, I was literally about 60 feet, maybe 100 feet from the finish line with over a minute left to go. I had run it in 11 minutes and 12 seconds with about 100 feet left to go. And all of a sudden, for something I'd never experienced before, and I've never experienced it again, my body shut down. It absolutely shut down to where I couldn't move. I couldn't see. It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I hear voices. My eyes are open, but I can't see. And I'm hearing voices. And all of a sudden I hear the cadet instructor yell, "Catch him." I'm like, what do you mean catch him? And all of a sudden 2 guys grabbed me. I was falling and didn't even know it. And they start walking me around. And a couple of the guys in the class were EMTs, and they checked my pulse rate. And my pulse rate was almost 300 beats per minute. I'd gone into what they call back then, and they still call it today, but supraventricular tachycardia. I was basically going to have a heart attack is what they were saying. And so they called the ambulance. I went to the hospital, and apparently that's the closest I've ever come to dying at that particular time in my life. Because of the circumstances, they let me go on in the academy. They waived that requirement. They let me go on to the second half. And by the time I got to the second half, I ended up running the 1.5 miles in 11:54, I think was the fastest I ever did it, at 245 pounds. It was hard for me. Other people, they're gazelles. They breezed right through it. But it was hard for me. If you fast forward to today, the standards are similar. There's still a push-up, a sit-up. I think there's a jump now. And the 1.5 mile run, you have to be able to run it in 15:54, I believe. 15 minutes and 54 seconds, which means you can literally go out and speed walk 1.5 miles. If you can speed walk, you may have to jog a little bit, but if you can speed walk fast continually without stopping, you can pass the 1.5 mile run. They almost killed me in the academy, and now you can walk the damn thing. And so I have I'm a little bit frustrated at that. The physical fitness standard has declined when it comes to law enforcement, and for good reason. Too many people are failing. At one point, I loved this. At one point, when they were changing it, about, I don't know, 5, 8 years into my career, they changed it to where you still had to run, but they added a push-up, a bench press. I was all for that. You had to be able to bench press your body weight, or 70% of your body weight. More people failed that than anything else. More people failed at being able to bench press 75% of their body weight than any other thing. More people failed that than they failed to run. The amount of weakness that was coming through the law enforcement academy was stunning. And it's only gotten worse. Well, I was so curious about this when Mark reached out to me. I looked up the progression and the evolution of the U.S. military physical fitness standards over the years. And of course, the U.S. military has always recognized that physical fitness is a key component of soldier readiness. You cannot be obese, soft, and out of shape and be a soldier. Okay, you just can't. But we have an increasing, changing military when it comes to physical fitness standards. But more than that is the recruiting, which we're going to talk about in a bit. And some of the military leaders in our country are very, very concerned about it. So in the early years, pre-20th century all the way up to World War I, physical fitness was not standardized for the military. Soldiers were expected to be able to march long distances and carry heavy, heavy loads and engage in manual labor. So you think back to World War I, we're talking Sergeant Alvin York and men like that who came from the farms and were used to manual labor. And so there was not a standardized physical fitness test during World War I, like running or anything like that, but they were expected to be able to pass basic physical assessments like carrying heavy equipment, jogging, those types of things. By the time we reached the 1940s, there was a strong push to standardize military fitness. And that's where we first begin to see the Army Physical Fitness Test implemented, was during World War II. The Army introduced the very first standardized fitness test, which included marching really long distances, running, push-ups, carrying heavy backpacks, rucking, that kind of thing. And after World War II, the APFT, the Army Physical Fitness Test, continued to be refined, and it increased its focus on endurance and strength. And the U.S. military began to really implement fitness assessments for both recruits and active duty personnel. So there was a lot of focus on physical fitness. The 1950s to the 1970s became kind of the gold standard, the rise of standardized fitness tests for the military. It became more structured, specific standards for running, push-ups, sit-ups. These standards were to assess the recruits' readiness and to keep the soldiers physically fit. You cannot go into battle carrying a Twinkie in one hand, your gun in another hand, with a big fat gut over your belt. You can't do it. You're not going to be an efficient soldier, and you're going to be a liability for everyone around you. 1980s and 1990s, some more things changed, and it became the APFT became the central physical test across all branches of the military. Recruits were expected to reach minimum scores for a 2-mile run. A 2-mile run. How many kids out of high school, and this is a shame, most of them should be able to, but how many kids coming out of high school can run 2 miles without stopping? Your athletes most certainly can. Those that wrestle, those that do football, those that do track and field, they certainly can. But I venture to say the overwhelming majority of high school seniors can't run 2 miles without stopping. Additionally, recruits had to be able to do anywhere between 30 to 50 sit-ups in 2 minutes. So fitness programs became more standard, and physical readiness was linked to combat efficiency. Physical fitness meant you were prepared and ready for combat. Starting in the early 2000s, at the turn of the century, the early 2000s, a lot of the military physical fitness standards shifted to what would be considered kind of functional fitness. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with the functional fitness as long as it is equivalently as hard as what they had before. So a lot of military includes like a deadlift, a 3-rep max deadlift, a sprint, a drag, carry drills of dummies, hand release push-ups, leg tucks for core strength, and again, that beautiful 2-mile run. And it continues to assess these things to this day. Very important. So the military is doing their part when it comes to physical fitness. The people that are not doing their part are those who want to join the military, are those who are recruitment age, those who are joining the military. They are not prepared. More and more and more recruits who are going into the military are needing remedial physical fitness training before they ever see basic training or boot camp. They are sent to specialized camps because they are obese or out of shape. This should not be the case. You should be in the greatest shape of your life when you're 18, when you're 19 years old. You should not be obese. You should not be metabolically unhealthy. What are we doing in this country that leads to such a high percentage of our youth, our military age men and women, being obese and unfit for duty? I used to make a joke, and I apologize, but I used to make a joke about law enforcement recruits and how they moved from the Boy Scouts and started going to the Girl and Cub Scouts, because I started seeing a change. Now that's not fair completely, but I did see a change in the new law enforcement recruits coming out of the academy and going into the academy. They were a lot of them were just softer. Now, thankfully, you have a lot of military guys, men and women, and athletes who are still interested in law enforcement, who are still interested in the fire service, and God bless them. They're coming in and they're ready day one to do the job. But there is just a large amount of people who are not. And our entire nation is weaker and more dangerous because of that. The military continues to update its physical fitness standards to ensure readiness, as does law enforcement. And we're going to have law enforcement physical fitness trainers on our show. We're going to interview some, hopefully at the beginning of the year. In fact, if you are a law enforcement physical fitness trainer or have experience in that area, reach out to me. We'd love to have you on the show. Especially if you have some experience, some time under your belt that showed that perhaps you can shed some light on the change that you have seen over the years in the law enforcement academies and how it changes. But there is incredible serious concern for both recruitment and retention because of one issue. And that issue is obesity. So we're not going to be really body positive here in the next little while because obesity is making us all, putting all of us at risk. It doesn't just put you at risk being obese with heart disease, atherosclerosis, diabetes, and everything else that comes along with being metabolically unhealthy. You literally are putting the rest of America, the rest of the citizens, the people around you at risk by being obese and metabolically unfit. General James McConville, Army Chief of Staff, said this, quote, "Obesity is the #1 disqualifier for military service right now. It's the biggest problem we have in recruiting, and we've got to focus on the health of American youth." He said that in the Army Times, October of 2019. We've got to focus on the health of American youth. Amen, General McConville. Absolutely. Our lack of conditioning in our youth, our overfeeding our youth, are allowing our youth to become obese and feeding them garbage and allowing them to sit around and play video games all day after school instead of making them get out and exercise. Now, I don't have no problems with video games. Play your video games. You got to understand, I'm very laissez-faire when it comes to what parents choose to do, what people choose to do. I'm very libertarian in that aspect. There's one of my favorite TV shows, Parks and Recreation. There's a gentleman on there by the name of Ron Swanson. He says, if you want to overeat and die at 40 because of obesity, that's beautiful. That's freedom. I love that. Something like that. That's kind of how I feel about it. You want to eat yourself to death? Have at it. You're an American. Feel free to do it. But understand the consequences. You're not just harming yourself, you're harming your children. If you're allowing your children to do that, you're harming them. And you're hurting and weakening America. That's just a side effect of your choices. The Department of Defense reports that approximately 71% of Americans aged 17 to 24 are ineligible for military service due to physical health issues, with obesity being the leading factor. Let me repeat that because it's shocking and it should make you angry. And it should drive us to action. The Department of Defense reports that approximately 71% of Americans age 17 to 24. So we're not talking about 50-year-olds with arthritis, 60-year-olds with arthritis, people with bad knees. We're talking about Americans who are age 17 to 24. You should be in the greatest shape of your life at 17 to 24, but 71% of you are ineligible for military service due to physical health issues, with obesity being the leading factor. Unbelievable. 71% of our youth, our military-aged people, can't even join the military because most of them are fat. I have nothing but love for you. I want you to know that. I love you. I love people. But harsh truths need to be spoken. That is just unacceptable. Unacceptable. General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff in 2021, said this: we've got an obesity epidemic in the United States. Ooh, that's not really PC there, Mr. General. We have an obesity epidemic in the United States. It's a national security issue. We can't afford to let the next generation of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines be disqualified due to obesity. General Mark Milley said this in March of 2021 on military.com. It's a national security issue. Obesity is a national security issue. The military is concerned. Law enforcement is concerned. Firefighting community is concerned that obesity rates are directly impacting the amount of people that they can recruit that will pass their physical standards. As a result, we are facing a recruitment crisis because fewer younger people are eligible to serve. That's tragic. Even if the military takes groups of obese young people and sends them to pre-camp to get them in some semblance of physical fitness shape before they go into basic training, there is a major issue. And here's the issue. This growing prevalence of obesity among active duty personnel is leading to an increase in injuries. particularly among soldiers who can't maintain the physical fitness standard. They might maintain it enough to pass it and get through basic training or boot camp, but then they allow themselves to get out of shape and they injure themselves. Soldiers who fail to meet requirements face separation from service or limited career advancement. And so physical fitness is critical. It allows you to advance. It allows you to promote. It allows you to have a successful career. Retired Major General James Oglethorpe talks about this, and he says this, quote, "Obesity is not only a challenge for recruiting, but for retention as well. Soldiers who fail the physical fitness tests are at risk of being separated from service. This creates a dual problem: not enough qualified recruits and an increased likelihood of attrition among existing personnel. The military will practically do everything they can to keep a person in the Army or the military right now because they have a recruiting problem. And so they're going to do everything they can to keep you in. Even if you're injured or you're obese or you can't pass the standards, they're going to do everything they can to get you to where you can. Unfortunately, too many of our soldiers are not doing what they need to do. They want to reap the benefits of the military. They want to reap the glory that comes from being a soldier, but they are not willing to put in the work. I'm telling you, if I was a young person, I wanted to join the Army. 6 months before joining the Army, I'd start getting up at 5 a.m. and going running. I would be the most conditioned I possibly could before entering the basic training or boot camp, because I know that it's not going to be easy, and it shouldn't be easy. They shouldn't make exceptions for you because you are out of shape, weak, or obese. You're literally volunteering to go defend the nation. Are we going to send soft, weak, coddled people to the front lines? No. It's tough. They continue on. It says, as I was reading in this article, it says, in addition to the physical fitness test, the military weight and body composition standards are supposed to ensure that soldiers stay fit throughout their career. However, as obesity rates rise across the country, maintaining these standards becomes more difficult, leading obviously to potential gaps in combat readiness. I am so grateful for those men and women who take this seriously. You're talking about, I mean, say what you want, but we still have the greatest fighting force in the world. When you look at Delta Force, there are no out-of-shape people in Delta Force. When you look at the Army Rangers, and you look at the Navy SEALs, and you look at our airborne Rangers, there are some incredible conditioned people. They are the elite, the best of the best. But we need more of those. We need more athletes in the military. The Department of Defense has recognized obesity as a national security threat. Can you believe that? Obesity is a national security threat. In a 2018 report, the Department of Defense warned that 1 million young Americans were disqualified for military service due to obesity and other health issues. Quoting from this study in 2018, they say this: the obesity epidemic threatens the future of our military and national security, period. Holy crap. Do you guys know this? Did you know this? The obesity epidemic threatens the future of our military and national security. And yet, body positivity is telling people, don't you dare judge me because I'm fat. I mean, the amount of people, a couple of years ago, fitness celebrity Jillian Michaels made one comment about the singer Lizzo, made one comment about her not being a good role model for young people because she embraces, endorses, and promotes obesity as beautiful and acceptable. And Jillian Michaels was excoriated, shredded, ripped to pieces by the media and on social media by snowflakes who can't handle the truth. But because she spoke truth, Jillian Michaels was torn apart. And that's the world we live in today. But we have from the Department of Defense saying obesity epidemic threatens the future of our military and national security. If current trends continue, they say, we could see a situation where the military is unable to find enough qualified recruits. That's horrifying. That's horrifying. Who's going to go defend our nation when Russia, China, whoever else wants to invade and take over the United States? Who's going to defend our country? The soft? The obese who can't run up a flight of stairs? Who? If current trends continue, we could see a situation where the military is unable to find enough qualified recruits. People, listen to me. Your choices are affecting our national security. As retired General Stanley McChrystal said, our military is only as strong as the individual soldier. Our military is already being undermined by poor physical fitness in many parts of the country. Obesity is one of the greatest threats to national security because we need people who are physically capable and healthy to ensure our military's strength. Amen. The same goes for our law enforcement community and our firefighting community. Thankfully, our military is not standing still. They're taking steps and initiatives to improve soldier fitness and nutrition and health education. The military is working to reverse what's happening. But we need more than that. We need our education in our parents, mostly our parents, to take responsibility. We live in the greatest country, the greatest land on the face of the earth here in the United States. And it's worth defending. But we are raising soft people. We are raising a soft generation of people who are not qualified to be law enforcement officers, of people who are not qualified to be firefighters, of people who are not qualified to be in the military. And that falls directly on generational obesity and a lack of health. It needs to stop. The food industry needs to be cleaned up. The relationship between Big Pharma and the FDA needs to be exposed. And most importantly, don't get it twisted. Most importantly, people need to take personal responsibility for their health. I've seen all this stuff, and I'm a big supporter of RFK, but I've seen all this stuff on social media. Yay, he's going to ban red 40. Yay, he's going to ban yellow this. And he's going to ban this. And he's going to ban glyphosates and this and that. You know what? You're cheering over the banning of glyphosates and a little bit of food dye, yet you don't exercise. You know, you're jumping over $100 bills to pick up pennies. You think that red dye is going to make and change and break your life, yet you're not spending 5 minutes a day in the gym. You're obese. You don't exercise, yet you think that RFK banning food coloring and additives is going to change your life? The one thing that has been proven beyond any other anything, I mean, it is established scientific fact. And that doesn't happen very often. You reach a certain level in science and health, but you don't reach complete conclusive fact. But here is some fact. Exercise is the most important thing you could possibly do to improve your health. And yet you want to ban red dyes instead of go to the gym. We need to change our mentality in this country. We need to change it for health. We need to change it for the better. I told you this episode could be triggering. I spit some truth, but I hope that you learn, and I hope that you, at the very least, take some action. Take some action for yourself. Take some action for your children. Take some action for your grandkids. Take some action for this nation. Obesity and the obesity epidemic is making us all less safe. Get out there and exercise. Share this episode with your friends, your family. Share it with your loved ones. Share it with your military friends and family, your law enforcement friends and family, your firefighter friends and family. Make sure you subscribe, hit like, comment for the algorithm. And until next time, be good to yourself, be good to others. And as always, stay safe.